Hello, so this is a progress report on customization of my Master Grade Freedom Gundam plastic model. So last time I mentioned that it was completely assembled out of the box and I wanted to paint it using an airbrush. And in order to do this I had to take it apart, so I started taking the parts of the assembly and painting them. And in particular, I worked on this wing unit, which is this system of wings and rail guns that sticks to the back of the mobile suit. So what I did was I applied the so-called pre-shading technique. And well, before I explain how I did it, the disclaimer: this is in no way a tutorial. There are excellent resources elsewhere online for doing this, and there are multiple ways of customizing or painting models. I don't think there is a single good way of going about it. I chose a pre-shading technique. The pre-shading is where you apply a dark background and then paint the parts of the assembly using an airbrush, creating highlights kind of in the middle of the raised parts. The reason for the shading is that if you apply a uniform color to the model, well, it would actually look similar to what comes out of the box, like this. And well, it seems like on the first glance it's a 3D assembly, so maybe emphasizing shadows and highlights is not necessary, but this is not the case. And in order to achieve the realistic effect, we need to actually paint the shadows and highlights, and this is because of the scale. This small scale model represents a much larger machine, so in the crevices of a larger unit the shadows would appear darker than they appear on the model, because here in the small scale the adjacent surfaces are very close and they reflect the light back into the shadow region, so it looks somehow our brains process information. We can see that, oh, this is a small model when we see unshaded kind of assembly like this. So a good practice and kind of a neat technique is to shade it, and there are various ways of doing this. You could paint the whole thing and then apply shadows and highlights. I like an approach where you paint it with the dark background first and then apply the colors. And so before painting with an airbrush you need to prime it. So primer is a special paint that's kind of thicker, has a little bit more grain, and it allows the colors, the colored pigments, to stick to the plastic eventually. There are a couple ways of doing this. I first tried using this surface primer by Vallejo. I decided to use acrylics. There are different types of paints one can use. I decided to use acrylics because they dry fast and they relatively non-toxic, and you still need to protect your face and use a spray booth because it's the fine particles that fly around. But the primary advantage of acrylics is the fast drying time, so you can paint multiple layers very quickly. That same feature is also a disadvantage. I have only one gun for the airbrush, and as you spray, the paint eventually dries and clogs up the airbrush, and you need to disassemble and clean it up, which is a little bit annoying. So I decided for priming, I decided to switch to a can. So I just basically spray the entire part in this black color. I chose black because that serves as a background for my pre-shading technique. So then after that dries, which which is really fast. I mean, I usually don't paint in the same session, priming and then painting, simply because I don't have large chunks of time to do this, but you could easily paint after a few minutes after applying the primer. This wing unit has this light and dark blue parts, so I used the pre-thinned Vallejo acrylics, and this one is Prussian blue, and there is a gray blue for the darker parts. You could mix them, of course. They come pre-thinned, but you can also add a thinner to get a uniform consistency, so some experimentation is needed. The acrylic paint comes out of the airbrush very thin. It doesn't cover the black primer color completely in a single layer. So if I want to create shadows, for example, I want to leave the parts of each armor panel that are close to the edges a little bit darker. So I spray the middle part of the panel more, basically just do several passes over, and that creates this shading effect naturally. So it's very simple, not super detailed, but the effect is quite realistic. I like it, and it's very easy to apply. So yeah, just having several passes over the raised areas or the middle of the armor panel creates this lighting. Then after everything is dried, I can just take an even lighter shade of color, maybe adding a few drops of white to the primary color, such as this blue, and then going over the very middle of the armor panels or the highlighted areas with that slightly lighter color, so that creates an even more 3D effect. After it's painted, the parts need to be protected. If you start assembling them right away, the paint is going to rub off. So I sprayed them with the clear coat, this clear gloss varnish, and it has this ball that you need to shake very well, and then apply a clear gloss varnish, and it creates protective color over the paint. Why I'm using gloss is that because the next step I'm applying the decals. These are these markers on various parts. I wanted to use water slide decals. These are the little markings and design elements that are printed on a clear film that's applied to the paper backing, and you cut it out, soak in water, slide off the backing, and the marking itself rests on the plastic part and dries off. The model itself, the model kit that I have, comes with dry decals. They're made by Bandai. I haven't tried using them, but from what I've seen, other people report as a result, and not very realistic. They actually detract a little bit from the view, kind of from the look of the model. So I found online on eBay third-party decals for this particular model, ET101 version 2, so to match the Gundam series, Gundam Seed markings. So I got them and applied them to this clear gloss finish, and this is why I use the gloss, because you want to be able to position them precisely so they slide easily. And actually one thing that I found very useful is the use of this microsole and microset solutions. Just got them at the local hobby shop. The microset is the first step. You basically brush it to the part where the decal would go, and when the decal is applied, before the microset dries, you could nudge it into the exact position, so it slides relatively easily. And once that's in position, with a small brush I applied microsol, and that kind of dissolves the film on which the design is printed, so it appears as if the markings are actually painted on the part. And after everything dries, I apply the next clear coat, and that is the matte varnish or matte clear coat. That protects the final assembly, so the decals are now sealed under that clear coat. And it looks, in my opinion, a little bit better than before. So it's the difference between kind of plasticky parts right here and the painted parts right there. So before painting and reassembling this wing unit, for example, I carved out some parts following suggestions on the internet again, and applied the LEDs. These are Evan Design's Pico LEDs to simulate the thrusters. So the wire is coming out, I'm going to feed it out eventually, but for now, just as a test, if I have this 2025 battery and press it to the leads, you could see that the thrusters light up. So that's the effect. Well, I did the same and applied this to the head unit of the Gundam right here. So again, the test would show that some LEDs light up, and in this case I used white LEDs for the eyes and the blue one for the back of the unit. So these two sub-assemblies, the head and the wing unit, are now done. I'm slowly progressing with the other parts of the model, working on the weapons and the hands, and then we'll do the arms, etc. It takes a lot of time, but I'm enjoying the actual slow process. It's one of the few things that I get to do without a deadline, so I'm using this philosophy that however long it takes, as long as I find the actual stage of the process enjoyable, I'm taking advantage of that and just playing with it. So that's the current stage. I'll show how it will look like after the body is painted. See you later.